Well, welcome everyone. It's our very first masterclass ever, and we're so thrilled to have you here. And I'd like to introduce Professor David Curtin, who the two of us studied with the same teacher at SUNY Fredonia. Not at the same time, but same university, great place. He has a degree from uh, Louisville, Kentucky. What was Oh, yeah. Louisville and Cincinnati. And he's played all over the world. He's a fabulous pianist and a great teacher, and we're so thrilled to have him. Welcome, David.
Thank you. Great to be here.
And I guess, we're good to get going here. And we have Louisa and Alina here. Welcome. Can you turn on your microphone?
Yes. There you go.
Hello. Yeah. Can you hear us?
Yep.
Wonderful.
Yeah? Yes.
Wonderful. So we'll get going, and you can tell us what piece you will begin with, and then we'll hear you play.
Womit beginnt ihr? Womit wollt ihr beginnen? Mit welchem Stück?
Ja, Bach.
Und wie heißt
Bach.
es ganz?
Ich weiß nicht, wie es auf Deutsch heißt.
Ja, sag ruhig.
Hammer-Sonate von Bach und Manet.
Yeah, the Bach. H-Moll sonate. Yeah. I don't know in English. That was in German. Was it too quiet, or could you hear it?
We can hear.
Okay. Yeah. Should they just start, or?
Yes.
I have to translate a little bit, perhaps, because it's their English is not. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. So.
Yeah. Okay.
Good. Very nice. Very enjoyable. One of the things that is sort of a challenge in Bach is, and not just Bach, but many composers, when the writing is kind of similar, and this is a characteristic of the Baroque era, there might be one basic rhythmic pattern or motive that is continued all the way through. Or there might be 2 or 3 different motives that are presented in different keys or kind of spun out and made into something longer from a smaller unit. The problem is that it makes the piece sound kind of similar throughout. It's very uniform. So what we have to do is try and find ways to give variety. And it might be very subtle because there's we can only do so much and still have it sound appropriate for the Baroque era. But you might start by, I don't know if you are thinking of the piece in terms of sections. Like, have you analyzed what the form of the piece is?
Die Form des in Sektion, also dem Timing von dem Stück. Denkt ihr Timing oder nicht? Nein. In einzelnen Teilen, Passagen. Teile? Ja, dann müsst ihr das sagen.
Yeah. Okay. And as you are playing it, for example, being very conscious of what key you are in and how that key relates to the main key, D major. So if you say, okay, now we're in, let's say, B minor, we're in the relative minor, or now we're in the key of the dominant or whatever. Sort of like the way that if I were to come to Germany, let's say, having never been there before, and someone was going to take me on a tour and drive me around and show me things. They would try and point out like what we call like points of interest, or landmarks or road marks. And so this is this is all very kind of general, interpretive advice. You're playing it very well. So it's more just sort of your conception of your role as sort of an interpreter, as sort of like a tour guide for the audience.
Müsst ihr euch das vorstellen, dass ihr das sozusagen nicht zu monoton macht. Nicht immer alles gleich spielt. Es gibt ja sozusagen 1 oder 2, 3 Themen in dem Stück. Und das ist aber nicht immer sich gleich anhört, sondern ihr wollt ja dann die interessanten Punkte herausstellen und ein bisschen sozusagen variieren, ohne dass ihr das Stück zunichte macht.
And I wanted to ask, sorry, the violinist is Elena?
Genau, Alina?
Louisa.
Louisa, okay, I'm sorry. Just sort of sometimes you have these high sustained notes, like measure 7, 8, 9, And I noticed that when you have those high sustained notes, sometimes you attack them. You play them sort of like strongly. The attack is yum thumb, and then other times you sort of ease into them, like you know. And it's fine. I was just wondering, what's your reason for doing it sometimes one way and sometimes another way?
Das ist der Grund, manchmal in die O-Töne. Vor Aina, was ist der Grund, manchmal wirklich reinzugehen, hart reinzugehen, und manchmal ja, gehst du ja ganz sanft rein. Machst du da einen Grund für?
And I'm asking the violinist. Yeah.
Luisa.
Yeah.
Luisa, hast du einen Grund dafür? Für die Hochtöne, manchmal gehst du scharf rein und manchmal gehst du sanft rein.
So, ja, also
Ja.
wenn es,
Warum?
wenn es zur Stelle passt, dass hart reingeht, dann mache ich das.
If it fits to the segment, if it fits to the segment, then she goes hard into it, and if it doesn't fit in her interpretation, she goes smooth
Okay.
into the tones.
Okay. Could you start at the beginning one more time? I just want to.
She alone or together?
No, both of you together.
Von vorne den Anfang.
Okay, that's good. So it seems like maybe you're doing the more attacking style when it's syncopated, like when it's on an off beat. Is that true? Or when it's on a weak beat?
Wann machst du es, wenn du sozusagen auf Peak bist? How can I translate it? I don't know.
It's okay.
So it's very difficult.
That's all right.
Ja, also genau. Wann spielst du scharf und wann spielst du nicht scharf? Wenn du sozusagen auf dem Höhepunkt bist, spielst du es scharf oder nicht scharf? Wenn du auf dem Höhepunkt bist, auf der Spitze, spielst du es dann scharf oder spielst du es dann nicht scharf? Scharf. If she's on peak, she tries to, be hard. Mm-hmm.
That makes sense. So I guess my point is, when you are making decisions like this, interpretive decisions, which we have to do a lot in Bach, because he doesn't give us very much other than just notes in the rhythms, right? So we have to make decisions about things like articulation. So all I would say is, you should always have a very clear idea of your reason why you are doing it a certain way. It should not.
Weil das alles interpretieren musst bei Bach, weil es ja sehr monoton sonst ist. Du musst genau wissen, warum du etwas wie tust, warum du es scharf spielst oder warum du, ne? Also nicht nur das, sondern allgemein.
Sometimes we hear musicians say something like, well, I just feel it this way. I just feel I should do it this way. And that's okay, but you should always, it should always be more than that. You should have a reason in your mind that you could describe to somebody, sort of like a principle. Or I think every decision you make, really, interpretively, you might only feel it as you're doing it, But if someone were to ask you why you do it that way, you should be able to give a reason.
Du solltest in der Lage sein, zu sagen, warum du das tust. Also warum spielst du es mal so? Also das ist eine Interpretation, das ist auch in Ordnung, aber du solltest immer wissen, warum du das tust. Nicht nur das Gefühl, sondern jemand anderes solltest du erläutern können, warum. Ja?
I wanted to ask the pianist, Elena, at measure 95, you have a trill.
Ja.
On an F sharp.
Should I put an other angle on the camera?
Oh no, that's okay. I have her music right here.
Ja.
I just wanted to ask about that trill.
Hast du da? Ja. Nee, einfach fragen. Ja.
Are you playing that trill? Maybe I didn't hear it correctly because of the, the audio or something, but maybe just play that section. Lead into that a little bit. Okay, so it's hard for me to tell exactly, but it sounds like you are maybe you're trying to match the trill, like play a measured trill along with the left hand. Or it seems like it's a little bit maybe having some difficulty there. I think the trill should be free and unmeasured. You should not try to make it the 16th notes or 32nd notes or something. It should just be a trill. And what
3 minutes?
Go ahead.
3 minutes.
3 minutes. Okay. So what you might do in this case is something like play the trill, just the trill, and then start your left hand, whatever it is. Or maybe just the left hand. You should try and have them be separate and one not affect the other. The trill in this case is really only there to sustain the note, because on the piano and especially on a harpsichord, the notes don't sustain. So the purpose of this is like if Bach were playing this on the organ, it might not be a problem because the F sharp would sustain. So we don't really want to hear rhythm in the right hand. We just want to hear a sustained F sharp, but we have to trill.
Das Trillern. Ja? Aha.
Yeah, I think that sounds much better. Maybe it was just the computer audio and the difficulties of hearing it from the other side of the world or something.
Also ist besser, oder? Also einfach nur das Trillern nochmal. Ja? Nein, die Kombination ist besser, oder? Also jetzt für den Trillern einfach nur ans Trillern denken, nicht an 16. oder 32. denken, sondern nur ans Trillern und ja.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I guess since we have so little time left, I don't know if it's worth starting the Piazzolla or not. I'm sorry if I talk too long.
They could play a few phrases of it if they want.
Maybe.
Ja, Piazzolla anspielen. Yeah.
Yeah. The Poco.
We have, they can give it a try, but she has one foot. Yeah. You know it already, so they still play it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just the beginning.
Yeah, just the beginning, and just give it a try because yeah, it sounds a little bit different because of her foot. Yeah, because
It's okay.
Okay.
Okay, we're gonna have to stop here. Maybe just a few words of wisdom from David.
Sure. I will say, all I will say, I can sum up very quickly. It sounds marvelous. I think you should keep in mind that this piece should be fun, and you should smile as you're playing. And yeah, it should make the audience smile. It's not so serious. Not like Bob or whatever, right? So when you practice, when you rehearse with each other, try making big silly smiles and looking at each other and like having fun with each other. It will change the way it sounds.
Ihr sollt euch anladen. Wenn ihr spielt, anladen.
Weil hier bei dieser Stelle muss man sein
Ja, ja.
Right?
They know it.
Pleasure to hear you. You sound marvelous.
Okay.
Thank you, Louisa and Alina. Dankeschön.
Very good.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very
Wonderful.
much.
Great to hear you. Have a great night. You're welcome to stay and watch.
I didn't know.
Oh, you're welcome to stay here and watch the rest of the class.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
So we put off the sound and
the camera, yeah.
And the camera. Okay, thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you. Okay, we have is it Junwen Liang? Is that how we say your name?
Yes, that's correct. Yeah.
Welcome. And it's my understanding that you've played for David before?
No.
Oh, no, okay.
He might not have been aware of it, but I think you played the etude in thirds.
Yes.
Yeah, I judged you like maybe a year ago or something. You were in something that I judged. You're here in State College, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry,
I forget what it was. Some competition
Okay.
at Penn State. MTNA or something.
Yeah.
It's a small world.
Yes.
Yeah.
I remember. Sorry.
That's all right. Yeah, you wouldn't have known. I was sitting out in the hall.
Welcome.
Hello.
So, you will be playing the Hungarian Rhapsody number 12 today?
Yes.
Wonderful. I have a quick question for you before we start. Are you on a laptop?
Yes.
Do you have your original sound turned on?
Yes.
Okay. Wonderful. All right. I'm good to go if David is.
Yep. Okay, I'm gonna.
Okay.
Okay, bravo. Very good. So first, I want to ask, what exactly is a rhapsody anyway? Or what is that? What's the origin of that word? And why do you suppose Liszt uh, chose that word for all of these pieces that he wrote?
I think Rhapsody is something that express your free mind and then be as wild as you can, but at the same time just be also very like emotionally expressive as much as you can. And I think it's also originally from like the kind of very gypsy side of that kind of spirit from um, that kind of musical perspective. I think Liszt that's why I think Liszt would like to write stuff like this and just also trying to represent that kind of nationalism from his country.
Okay, well, that's definitely the Hungarian part. So Liszt called this a Hungarian Rhapsody rather than just Rhapsody. And of course Liszt kind of, as many people did back then, Hungarian was kind of understood to mean basically gypsy music. They were understood to be basically the same thing, which they aren't really, and we know that now, but that was definitely part of the thinking at the time. But the word rhapsody actually has a very specific meaning that goes way, way back, that Liszt would have been aware of. And what a rhapsodist is, it's actually a Greek word. The rhapsodists were, in ancient Greece, people who were paid to recite the epics of, especially, let's say, the Iliad and the Odyssey. They memorized poetry, epic poetry, and it was all from memory. And they were actually performers. They were paid performers who would recite or declaim this poetry. And and I think knowing that gives you kind of a clue to Liszt's thinking, or to how this should be performed a little bit, because it's very, I don't know if this word declamatory, to declaim, it's different from merely speaking, right? And the timing has a lot to do with it, and just sort of like the attitude or the pose that you strike when you are, if you are reciting poetry, it's not the same as speaking in prose. Or even like if I'm giving a lecture, I am reciting a little bit and declaiming, but it's not quite the same as if I were reciting poetry. So that's the feeling you should have a little bit as you're playing this. And in the way that, for example, when people recite poetry, or people give speeches, when politicians give speeches, sometimes if they're really good at it, they use silence in a particular way, and they set things off in a particular way, and they're very conscious of timing in speech. Okay, and then the other thing I wanted to ask about is, what is this, the opening of this? Is there a particular, what do you think Liszt had in mind? And I should ask, what do you have in mind? What is the mood that you're trying to establish? What mood do you have in mind? What specific mood? And what is the sound that Liszt is after here? Is he trying to imitate something?
I think to me the beginning it's more like a not intense, but somewhat close to the kind of mindset, but also feeling a little bit sad, and not angry, but also feeling a little bit agitated. That's why we
Okay, I would say agitated is good. I don't know so much sad. Well, it's
about 7 minutes. Just
okay. Thanks. I would say tragic, sort of like a Greek tragedy. There's a feeling of something very. This opening should grab the listener right from the beginning, and I feel like yours could grab me a little bit more. And by the way, the Liszt is deliberately imitating the sound of. Do you know what a cembalon is, or a zither?
Yes.
Yeah. So this is like all those tremolos. The instrument we're talking about is a very common gypsy instrument. It's sort of like it's almost like a piano without a keyboard, where you have little mallets and you hammer on the strings yourself. And actually, you should listen to. There are some great performances. Maybe you already have of music like this gypsy style music by Liszt and by Brahms, where they actually use some of these instruments. And so that's what the tremolo is all about, and also these grace notes. At the beginning, your grace notes seem too slow to me. It's like da-dum, da-dum, da-dum. I think it should be da-dum, 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 da-dum. Can you try it like that? other thing I would do. I think it'd be more dramatic, and it's also, I think, more what Liszt has in mind. That very last chord that you play, it's got an accent and a dot, and it's an eighth note. I don't think it's da-dum. Don't hold it in the pedal. It's more like ra-dum. It should cut off. Da-dum. And when you cut it off, if you're playing in a big hall, it'll echo through the hall. It'll be much more dramatic. It'll grab people's attention. Try it that way. Yes, I like that better myself. These things are all very personal, and if you listen to performances of this Rhapsody, I'm sure you have listened to many different performances, and you hear that people play them very differently. So this is just what I find more convincing. It's not necessarily correct or anything, but that's kind of more what I like. And this grabs me from the beginning, like, whoa, something dramatic and stirring. It's some, you know, the great poet has just stood up and he's about to tell us about great deeds and heroic things and tragic things that happened 500 years ago, you know, or whatever. You know, that's the feeling we should have. Okay, let's go on from, let's say, measure 7 or so. So a couple other places, just very little
About
details
3 minutes.
of timing. Okay, thanks. Little details of timing. So for example, measure 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, where you have the fermata and there's an eighth rest there. If you hold the pedal through, we lose the eighth rest, and we lose that little moment that sets this measure off from what follows. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then similarly, just before you have those big chords, Liszt goes to the trouble of writing in a 16th note and a 30-second rest. So I feel like that should be set off a little bit as well. And I think you could hold the pedal there, but I think there should be just those high chords should be set off a little bit so that they really strike us. Similarly, at the end of this, at the double bar, just where you ended, we have that big leap in the left hand up to the A with the fermata, and that minor sixth, that leap is really expressive, and I think we can have some timing there as well. There's a lot of little places where I feel like you could declaim it a little bit better with timing. All the technical stuff is great. You're really on top of it, and it's very impressive. One other, let's see. I know we're probably kind of out of time. I just want to see a couple other. Oh, right after that, actually, the adagio, right where you left off. Can you start that adagio after the double bar? Okay. Again, here, this mood. What mood are you trying to? What do you feel is the mood at this moment? What are you trying to project?
I think I still have that kind of tragic feels, but it's more calm, because I have like chords and I feel slightly like not secure but just slightly stable, but just more like can be more expressive.
Okay, so not as agitated as before, like a contrast with what came before. And I think that's arguable. Here's the thing. So as I'm looking at it, and as I heard you play it, I'm thinking, well, he probably sees the word adagio, which literally means at ease, and it sounds a little too relaxed to me. I feel like it's too soon to be this. And so what I would focus on more is the fact that, first of all, we still have those grace notes, and I would continue to play them da-dum, da-dum. I would not do ta-tum. I would not stretch out and do like sort of rubato on a grace note like that. I would think of it again. It's an imitation of this hammered dulcimer instrument, where you're percussively ba-bum. Even though the tempo is slow and the notes are slow, the grace note should not be slow. I don't think. I think that the effect is kind of ruined. Also, even though it's adagio, it's forte, and each one of these is accented. Liszt puts an accent on each one of them. So I think there's still, the adagio is not really a mood indicator in this case. It's really just a tempo indicator, I think. It shouldn't be calm. It should be forte and accented. Can you try it that way for me? Yeah, I still hear da-da. I want to hear la-dum, 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 la-dum. Okay, and I know we're probably just about out of time, but also it seems too slow here. It's adagio, but really, if your tempo is, and it doesn't sound like it's in 4 anymore. Your quarter notes sound like half notes, and then your eighth notes sound like quarter notes. So I think it's more like la-dum, 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 ba-dum, ba-dum, So I would try maybe going through sometimes with the score and just conducting and singing like I'm doing, and say, well, really, is this really in 4? Are these really quarter notes, or is someone going to hear them more as half notes? Because like this section, it sucks too much of the energy out of the piece too soon, right? And I know we just scratched the surface. It's a big, long piece, but I think this is really more the work that it needs. That technically and all that, like later on, that the ending, all that fast is fantastic. So the stuff that I'm addressing here would be very easy for you to, and it's not like you have to do it, just to think about and to fix. But you're doing a fantastic job. Really, bravo.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Bravo. It's really wonderful. All righty. Thank you. We need to move on to Rosa. Hello.
Hi.
Welcome.
Thank you.
This is Professor David Curtin, Rosa, and welcome. And what will you be playing for us today? Can you announce your piece?
Tu pieza que si la puedes anunciar. Oh, I'm gonna play Brahms Ballad 2, Opus 10.
Wonderful. Are you good to go, David? All right.
Bravo. Well done.
Bravo. Rosa, are you on a computer?
Yes.
Are you on a Mac?
No.
A PC?
Yeah.
Okay. Can you turn on your original sound function?
Okay. Sorry, I forgot. I already turned on.
Okay. All right. Wonderful.
That sounds better.
Sorry.
Okay.
Okay. So the title of this piece is Ballade. It's kind of interesting because the last piece we listened to was Rhapsody. What does that title suggest to you? What do you think it means, or why did Brahms choose that title and not some other title?
Maybe because there is a narrative in the piece.
Yeah.
Starts very calm, then it's like just noisy. I don't know.
Well,
And then, well, it,
no, that's right. I think the first thing you said is exactly right. There is a narrative, right? So it's storytelling, and these, and of course in English the word ballad. There's a tradition of these ballads, which are usually sort of there are very often love stories, but sometimes tragic in nature, and so yeah, I think there's definitely that element, and we should be conscious of, like, you are telling a story, you're a storyteller, and it could maybe be, you could imagine maybe yourself, you're around a campfire with a bunch of people, and you're telling some old story of romance and maybe tragedy, and maybe there's some peaceful resolution or whatever, but it's very much storytelling. And again, so timing is always important in storytelling, and also I think in this piece, especially in this opening section, I feel like and I might be wrong, of course, but I feel like it has a character of improvisation. Like, it's the kind of thing that maybe that young Brahms, and this is young Brahms is in his 20s, if he had just sat down at a piano and just started playing without having, this is something that it seems to me, it sounds kind of like an improvisation, a little bit. So that means that as you are playing it, you should sort of imagine that you are improvising it. Now, obviously, you've learned it and you're reading the notes, and you're not really improvising. But if you were, what would it feel like? You should imagine that you are improvising, I feel like, the opening. And that maybe even as you are playing, you're not sure what you are going to do next. Like, I might play this chord, or I might play this chord. I might go into this key, or on the other hand, I might go to this key. And if you aren't really sure, or if you can act, right? If you can convince yourself that you aren't really sure what's coming next, then the audience will feel the same way. You know what I mean? Does that make sense? Yeah. So you should do it's sort of like, you know, what storytellers do as well. I think good storytellers, they don't sound too rehearsed. A good storyteller is not going to give the impression that this is the 500th time they've told the same story. They're telling it as if it's, you know, the first time, you know. And I'm not criticizing it all the way you play. It's just ways of thinking as you are playing, you know, things to think about. Because, of course, we want to get beyond thinking about the notes and the dynamics and the fingering and, you know, because we want to conjure up this story, right? Good. Can you, and actually that's good because
about 8 minutes.
Okay, the opening section, which is more dreamy and song-like and kind of improvisatory, contrasts well with the next section, which is, you know, more forceful and more rhythmic, and has a little bit less improvisatory, I think, and more kind of structured and more, you know, as a direction that it definitely is moving, you know. All right, can you start at the beginning for me one more time? We'll see if the sound quality is any better this time. Good, good. Very nice. I feel like you are, you know, sort of dreaming it or improvising it. Can I make a suggestion of where you have the 16th notes? I think you could play those a little bit more free. So like, la, la, da, 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 dum, da, da, dum, you know, you can, I would maybe delay them slightly and play them a little bit more, a little bit quicker, like the way that you might sing them. You can imagine some words that would be there. I think very often, you know, this is very vocal kind of style. It's very song-like. So it's sometimes helpful to imagine words, and they could be words in Spanish. It doesn't matter. You know, it doesn't matter what the words are. You could make up your own words, and it might affect the way that you kind of declaim or articulate, you know, like these 16th notes. Just an idea. Can you start the next section, the allegro? Yeah, da, 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 dum, da, 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 dum. Good. That's fine. So one thing I would say is it starts out mezzo forte and in a lower octave, and then it goes to forte in a higher octave. And it might just, again, it might just be sort of like the recording, the sound issue, but I feel like there could be more difference between mezzo forte, starting off mezzo forte in a lower register, and then forte and in a higher register, So something that is a little bit restrained at first is then put out in the open, la ta 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 dum, ba da ta ta dum, ra ta 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 dum, more insistent and more intense as it is forte and up the octave. So just an idea. Could you do then a little bit of the next section, the staccato e leggero section? Okay, good. Again, it's sort of hard for me to tell exactly how light it is and how piano, but I think I would try and keep it very light, leggero. And it's kind of tricky to do because it's like the left hand is fairly low and it's hard to play that softly and light when you're in that low register. So try extra hard, especially, to keep it very light and leggero. And also keep the tempo pretty steady here, because since it's just quarter notes all the way through, right? And there's no other rhythm really, just quarter, 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 quarter. If you speed up a little bit or slow down a little bit, or if you rush, it becomes very obvious. There's nothing to hide behind. It's almost like a metronome ticking. If it suddenly ticks faster, right? So I think it should be fairly steady. I don't see a reason to speed up. I felt like somewhere a few measures in that I felt a little bit of rushing going on. I'm not sure again, but so I would try and keep it pretty steady. And then when it's pianissimo and legato, again, now both hands are in a low register. And so it's going to be hard to be pianissimo down there. You might consider using the soft pedal to really get, because I think you're going to have to make a difference from pianissimo compared to the earlier piano. And I think that piano, you should be playing very, very soft so that it can be light, but you still have to be softer later on when it's pianissimo. So that might be a place to use the soft pedal, maybe just a suggestion. Okay, can we go from, if we have the time.
Yeah, we got like 1 minute.
Okay, let's do from the end of that pianissimo section, the transition back to when it crescendos, it becomes louder. When it goes back into 4/4 time, if you could start from there. And we have where we have the double bar in 4/4. Yeah. Okay, good. So here, this is a place right where you started, pianissimo. This should definitely sound uncertain. Like we don't know where things are going to go from here. So I think here is a place where it doesn't have to be in such steady time. The previous section is pretty steady, as I talked about. I think should be pretty steady. But here we have these sustained chords which have no rhythm, and then we have rests which have no rhythm really, and then we have just that figure, dot 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 dum. It's just a fragment of the figure, and so we don't really know where we're going. It's like Brahms is, again, if you were improvising, he was thinking, well, where should I go from here? And so as you're playing it, you should feel like, I'm not sure where this goes. And you should give us the impression that you're making it up as you go along. And it doesn't have to be in strict time. We should be surprised by each of these changes of harmony, like, oh, I wasn't expecting that. And if we're heading in a surprising direction, an unexpected direction, it has to be set off in time a little bit. You know what I mean? In order to be surprising. And then when the main theme comes back of this section, remember now it's piano. So before it started out mezzo forte and went to forte, and I talked about that. This time it's basically the same thing, but it's piano. So we should hear a very distinct difference that's very subdued. There's tension, but it's subdued. And then, of course, you will quickly crescendo, but make sure that it starts out really piano, like an intense piano. Okay, does that make sense?
Yeah.
Any questions?
I think no.
Okay. All right, well, wonderful. Great job. Nice to hear you.
Wonderful to have you, Rosa. And you're welcome to stay and watch if you wish. All right. We'll hear more from you soon. Okay, thank you. Hello, Alina.
Hi. I just turned 6 last month.
Wonderful.
Congratulations.
Are you at your piano?
Yes.
Okay. Can we have the camera so that we can see your hands at the piano? Oh, wonderful.
I will play Sonatina by Beethoven's second movement.
Wonderful.
Very good. Great job. Okay. Very nice. How long have you been working on that piece?
I think maybe 2 months.
Okay. That's
2
very
weeks,
good.
I think.
2 weeks. That's fantastic. Okay. when you are playing, maybe your teacher has said something about this, but when you are playing, do you feel like you are sort of singing through the piano, or do you feel you do? Okay, very good, very good. So I'm just going to give you some ideas to how you might make your playing sound a little bit more singing. All right. So one thing is that if you were to sing this melody, of course there might be some words, right? I mean, we might singing on la 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 or whatever, but there would, if this was a song, there would probably be some actual words, and who knows what the words would be. But I think one thing that we do when we sing, and we do this naturally without even really thinking about it because of the way that the voice works, we tend to sing lower notes a little bit softer and higher notes a little bit louder. And the reason for that is, in order to sing a high note, you just have to push more air and it ends up being louder somehow, right? And we do this without thinking about it, really, when we're singing. But on the piano, we have to think about it in order to imitate that, you know? It doesn't come naturally at the piano the way that it comes naturally when we sing. So, for example, the very beginning, instead of doing something like this, can you think of playing the very first note, that B, kind of soft, and then do you hear how I'm making little crescendo and decrescendo? As the melody goes up and down, I'm getting a little bit louder and a little bit softer. So every single note, actually, you could think maybe you put a number on it. And maybe the very first note is about a 3 in volume, sort of like a volume knob. So maybe it goes 3, 4, 5, 1, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1. Yeah. And if you do it very slowly and you exaggerate, then as you go faster and as you do this, as you get in the habit of doing this with everything you play, it'll start to sound much more vocal. It will make people think, when they're hearing you, it will make people think of singing instead of like fingers moving on keys. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. Why don't you try that? Try the very beginning, and why don't we go a little bit slow, because this might be something new to you. And I want to hear every up and down in that melody. And I would start soft. Yeah. Very nice. Okay, now another thing that will help with it fits in with exactly what I was talking about with singing and trying to make all these ups and downs, right, in your right hand. And when you're playing, by the way, like when I'm playing, I try and make it feel like I'm not playing the piano from here. I'm playing it from here. I'm trying to sort of sing through the piano. And it's kind of strange. It's just a way of thinking. I mean, obviously I'm really playing with my fingers, but I feel like the sound, I try and imagine that the sound is really coming from kind of like my stomach, you know, or your lungs, sort of like the way when you sing, right? So one other thing that's related to this is in a lot of music, we have melody in the right hand. And what would we call what's going on in the left hand? What's your left hand doing as you play this?
Sometimes just making chords for right hand.
Yes. So the left hand is basically making chords. It's what we call accompanying, right? Sort of like maybe, I don't know, maybe you've already done this, but if you accompany somebody else, like somebody else is singing and you're playing the piano, or someone else is playing the violin, and it's very fun accompanying and playing with other musicians. So when you're playing, although it's just you, you're actually like two people. Your right hand is a singer and your left hand is an accompanist, right? And they have different roles. Sort of like in a painting. In the painting, you have some things that are in the foreground, like maybe a person standing there. And then you have other things that are in the background, like maybe some trees and some clouds, right? And in a painting, the artist definitely wants us to see the foreground things as more important and the background things are less important. So same thing with melody and accompaniment. And again, it's a little bit hard to tell because we're listening over a computer and a microphone, and it's hard to know exactly what your balance is between right and left hand. But I feel like maybe your left hand could be a little bit softer. And if your left hand was softer, then your right hand could make all of these ups and downs. Yes, very much like this. Your right hand could make all of these ups and downs. And when your right hand melody was on a soft note, let's say like a low note, the accompaniment wouldn't cover it up, right? So the more quiet your accompaniment is, then the more you are able to do all of these ups and downs and sing with the melody and never get covered up by the left hand. You know what I mean? Okay, so let's try something. So this is what I do sometimes with my students. If I'm trying to get them to make their left hand softer and their right hand louder, right? Instead of starting out here and trying and saying, okay, and I'm playing both hands about equal, now I'm going to try and make the right hand louder and the left hand softer. Sometimes it's good to start from the extreme, like play the right hand as loud as you can, okay, just for fun, kind of experiment. I want you to try the beginning, play the right hand very loud, and the left hand, I just want you to touch on the surface of the keys and not really play them, not play them loud enough to make any sound, but sort of just on the top of the keys, like see, you can't really see, but I'm playing those chords in the left hand, but I'm just tapping on the surface of the key. I'm not pushing the key down enough to make a sound. Okay, so that's the extreme difference. So we'll try that first, and then maybe we'll bring it in a little bit, and find a good balance. Yeah? Try that. Maybe just the first phrase with right hand super loud and left hand so quiet that I can't hear it. Good. Okay, now I want you to keep the right hand where it is, but play the left hand slightly louder, like just enough so that I can barely hear it. Can you try that? It's tricky. Let's try this. Go very slowly because it's hard to do this and keep the correct tempo. So maybe go like la da da. Boop, boop, yum, boop. Okay, very slow. Can you make the left hand even softer? But keep the right hand just where it is. Okay, good. So this is something that you should get in a habit of doing this with all of your pieces probably most of what you play will be right hand melody and left hand accompaniment.
About 5 minutes.
Okay, thanks. So anytime you have that, you should sometimes practice the piece with the right hand playing very loud and the left hand just tapping on the surface of the keys, making all the same motions with the right fingers that you would normally use, but not playing loud enough to make any sound at all. And that's sort of like stage one. And then you go through it again and you play the right hand a little softer and the left hand just a little louder so that you can barely hear, right? And then maybe stage three, right hand a little bit softer, left hand a tiny bit louder so that you have separate control over the volume of your right hand and your left hand. Now, sometimes it's the opposite. And there's sometimes the left hand has the melody and the right hand has accompaniment. So then we need to be able to do the opposite. So what you might try to do is maybe, do you play like Hanon exercises or scales, that kind of thing? Do you do like this kind of thing? Do you do those kind of exercises?
I do it.
Okay, good. So when you're doing these kind of exercises where both hands are doing the same, playing the same notes, let's say maybe an octave apart, sometimes you should try playing one hand very loud as you can, and the other hand as soft as you can. And then maybe switch. So for example, I'm going to play my right hand as loud as I can and my left hand as soft as I can. And now I'm going to switch. And I'm going to switch again. And switch again. Do you hear the difference?
Yes.
So I'm trying to turn it on and off and switch very rapidly from one to the other so that my two different hands become like two different people. And I can make one louder, one softer. They aren't really tied to each other. Yep.
It sounds like
yeah, go ahead.
Like two people are doing seesaw.
Yes, exactly. Sometimes one's down and the other one is up. Very good. And another thing you can do, by the way, same idea. Sometimes play one hand legato and the other hand staccato, like, and then switch. And switch back. You know, there's all kinds of ways you can, when you're doing a simple scale or exercise, you can practice something else besides just playing those notes with those fingers. You can work on dynamics or articulation or separating the hands, making them independent. Right? I want to talk about one other little thing in this opening melody. Going back to this piece where you have la da da dum, ba da 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 la dum. Can you make sure that the last note of that melody, of that first phrase, doesn't stick out, so that it, when you played it, it sounds a little bit like this. La da da dum, da 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 dum. Okay? Try it one more time. Yeah.
It sounds like it's going on the music sheet.
Yes, like it jumps out at you. Okay, so don't make it jump out. Make it da 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 dum. The last note of that phrase should actually be very quiet. Can you try that? Just play the very opening. Actually, the B can be louder. Just the G, the last G should be soft. Very nice. Okay, so when we are playing these little phrases, these sentences, that's kind of like what they are. They're musical sentences. The beginnings and the ends of these sentences or these phrases are very important. So, for example, we talked about the first note, la, da, da, and then the last note, also important, la, da, 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 so that the phrase has a beginning and an end that's very clear, and it has a nice shape. Right? And so, you know, this is what something you should do. All of your pieces that you're working on, you should sing them. Because what we, as pianists, the instrument that we play, unfortunately, is not much like the human voice. It's more like a typewriter. So we have to go out of our way to try very hard to make it singing. And that means taking your music and singing it a lot, and then imitating at the piano what you do naturally when you sing. Okay? Make sense?
Yes.
All right, great job.
Great job, Helena.
Fantastic.
Does anybody have any questions? We still have a few people in the room. Okay, well, it's wonderful to have everybody. We're going to take a break here, and we will be back at 12 o'clock.
Yep.
Okay, thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Nice to hear you all.